Welcome to episode 38, Newy Tech People. Today we've got Dan Farthing, who's currently Program Manager, Digital Solutions at Bradken. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, James. Good to be here.
Mate, newish role for you. Pretty exciting, but you've been a local member of the tech scene in Newcastle for some time now. I think most people would know of you. You've been involved with a couple of different startups, various different techs, but for the small population that doesn't, can you give us an overview? Who are you? Where have you been? What have you done?
We've been in Newcastle now for nearly 16 years. Grew up on the mid-north coast in a little town called Taree. Yeah, I've been down here. I came down to Newcastle to start in my IT career of network engineering, sysadmin sort of stuff. So my first job in Newy was at Port Waratah Coal, rolling out Windows XP.
Mate, we all start somewhere. That's good, and mate. You've obviously you're involved in various different technologies at the moment. But I know for one of the things that you and I got to know each other quite well through, like in your startup, your startup Kegit, in around that IoT space.
Yeah,
mate. Kegit's still alive.
Kegit's still alive. Developing hardware I discovered throughout that journey from 2017, 2018 is a really expensive and potentially slow process, especially if you don't have a lot of money. Kicked Kegit off, which is a logistics and asset tracking solution for the brewing industry. I kicked that off, got into a slingshot program, got a little bit of seed funding to kind of get some MVPs off the ground. And then hardware development and traction with that is something that's pretty hard. So that's kind of in R&D mode at the moment. Got some IP there around the hardware.
Yeah.
It's over there being an app that's available for use on mobile for tracking kegs.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens with the hardware as the IoT space develops at the moment. Battery life is getting a lot better. Comms are getting a lot better and a lot cheaper. So, it's there, but it's not doing a great deal. So it's my hobby.
Your side project?
My side project.
Yeah. Mate, you mentioned hardware there. I think most people I have on the podcast, and I would say most people that outside of core technology have an idea about technology is always software, right? It's always software related.
Yep.
So obviously it's a big hardware side to it. And a lot of startups don't touch the hardware because of the challenges regarding costs and getting things up. Why? I guess you played mix of software and hardware. Why that for you?
My background is in network engineering. So I did network engineering at TAFE, a diploma of network engineering. And so I've always been in the networking kind of hardware end of the IT world. Did that for sort of 10, 12 years. So I was pretty comfortable with the comms side of IoT. And then just through building the solution that Kegit was around mobile asset tracking and understanding the industry, understanding the problem really well, meant that it had to be a hardware solution. Yeah. And then I was comfortable getting into the hardware because of my background.
Yep.
And so that's the path that I took.
Yeah, nice. For other people, right, startups, anyone in that sort of space or has got an idea in that hardware place, is there any advice you give to people? There's obvious challenges there, but is there any advice, given your experience, that you give to people that are looking to go down that path?
Down the path of hardware, yeah. I think the hardware space is really exciting at the moment. So in my role now at Bradken, they're traditionally a big foundry business. So they make big steel things for the heavy industry the biggest steel things. So turning liquid metal into big cast metal products, and then that stuff wears out, and mining customers, whoever, buy more and more of that over and over and over again. So that's their business. We're now bringing technology into that space to understand how that product works and wears, and when it's going to wear out next, and all that kind of thing. So hardware is now infiltrating traditionally, very non-tech spaces. And I think in Newcastle we're in an awesome spot where there's a lot of traditional manufacturing industry that is becoming more and more tech focused, because the customers want more data about what's happening on the physical products. So my advice is, if you're interested in hardware or if you're interested in tech, have a look at the mechatronics side of things. There's a lot that you can do in that space. There's a lot with things like, Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and these kind of things where you're playing with hardware and you're plugging in sensors. It's still very plug and play. It's almost like, high-tech Meccano.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to get started to understand what you can do. And it all kind of starts to gather data. And then from the software integration piece between the hardware and the sensors and turning that data into useful information to make decisions and gain insights. That is the space that's, really exciting and progressing really rapidly at the moment. In my role at Bradken, that's what we're investing a lot of effort into, one, getting the data and building the tech and the hardware that gets the data, but then we've got to do something with that to improve, the business and the decisions that are being made. So if my advice is, if you're interested in that stuff, if you like playing with physical stuff, get some electronics, grab a Raspberry Pi, grab some sensors, grab some Arduino gear, get it, have a play. It's really easy and quite inexpensive to get into.
Probably get along to blast furnace as well.
Blast furnace is a great opportunity. Parents, kids, whatever, both go along.
For those that don't know, blast furnace is a local meetup run by Cameron Owen, who's been on this podcast in the past. Really hands-on, probably the most hands-on of any meetup. It actually does try to teach practical skills.
Yeah, for sure. And there's programs like that are filtering their way into schools. So kids are getting the opportunity more and more. And I think we're going to see an even greater penetration of that, of getting the experience of playing with these electronics. Back when I was first going through school, there was some opportunities to do a bit of electronic stuff. You'd grab a Dick Smith book and a Dick Smith kit and you'd solder some stuff together and, you'd make a switch that turned some LEDs on and off. Now you can grab a Raspberry Pi and put a moisture sensor in a plant and, have an automated watering system set up. So all with a simple kit. So there's pretty cool stuff that you can get out there and get your hands dirty and start to understand what that space is doing.
Yeah, nice. I'll switch gears slightly. The industry you went into with Kegit, in the beer industry, right? I know you have a keen interest in the craft beer scene, and then you've applied your experiences to that industry. You've seen a gap in the market. How did that come about to start with?
Yeah, so that came about because I had enough of the sort of hardware industry, the traditional IT industry. Had been doing network and sysadmin and consulting roles for sort of 10 years. Got to see a lot of businesses, enjoyed helping businesses change the way they did things. But it was around the time when software as a service started to take off. So rather than just putting your servers in a data center and doing everything the same, that was kind of the revolution that I got to experience and be a part of. Then there was things like Xero coming out and, software as a service-based system to business systems that were really changing the way that you did business. So you didn't need a server anymore. You didn't need a file server. You didn't have documents and printers. You just did everything online. It's great. And it's now common practice and it's the known thing. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to help businesses transition into that space. And so that's what I did. I got a job consulting in that space. And helping businesses change the way they did things. Did a lot with inventory management, e-commerce. That got me into the brewing industry, seeing the back office of breweries. I went from knowing some brewers and, having an appreciation for craft beer to understanding the industry and really getting to know the personalities. And I love the brewing industry. It's an interesting mix of, chemical engineers, very science-based, mixed with art, the art of gastronomy, delighting people's senses from a taste and smell point of view. I love that there's this really interesting mix there. So there's some great characters and it's a really enjoyable product. Who doesn't like, delighting your senses with a cold frothy beverage?
No, I'm definitely one of those. No, that's interesting. I think what you did there is combining your experiences and your passion.
Yeah,
is something that you see a lot of people have success in their careers if they can get a combination through their passion and what they're good at or what their experiences like. I think it does lead to a lot of success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it certainly gave me an opportunity to make genuine connections. So sometimes you see somebody in an industry that they don't connect well with the industry. They can do the job, but they don't connect well with the industry. The brewing industry, particularly the smaller craft brewing industry, you don't get very far if you're that kind of person, because it's very there's lots of relationships. It's a pretty tight community. You've got to fit in. You've got to love what's the product is about, what the industry is about. And there's a lot of other industries that are like that. And so if you are enjoying what you're doing and genuinely enjoying the product of what your job or what your industry is about, then you're going to engage with it so much more. You're actually going to be enjoying it. Yeah, so I think that's a huge thing. And it also meant that for me, I enjoy my work. I enjoy the job. I enjoy working with those businesses, because from a back office point of view, they're difficult businesses to work with. They're not particularly efficient. They don't use tech very well. So it was hard, but I enjoyed the industry and had a passion for what was going on there. So yeah,
nice. But I think the other thing there is, and this is something I talk, especially younger people, is having a side project and that leading to your job, right? Yeah. The job you've got right now, you wouldn't have got without Kegit, right? That Kegit, that 100%. IoT experience, the software, hardware, mix, all the experience that you got through Kegit set you up really well to go into your role now, where you, once again, playing a lot of the same experiences, a lot of those learnings that you had from that industry and applying it to a new industry. That set you up there, that the side projects led to now your full-time role.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was like doing, an MBA in product development and hardware development. Yeah, for sure. And in having the opportunity or taking the plunge. Everyone probably has the same opportunity that I had. I took the plunge and said, I'm going to have a red hot crack at this. It started off by saying, I'm going to apply for this accelerator program and I'm going to give myself 3 months to decide what's going on. And that sort of turned into more like 18 months. Bumbled along the way towards the end, deciding, do I kill it or what do I do? That's a difficult time for anybody who embarks on a new idea. But I took the plunge and learnt so much. Like you can't learn some of those lessons if you just dabble, because you don't push yourself hard if your back's not up against the wall. So, yeah.
There's a lot to be said for scrappiness and what you do when you need to do it, right?
100%. Yeah. If, you don't get innovative when you're comfortable. Yeah.
Completely agree. Mate, I'll change the pace a tiny bit. You mentioned you've been in Newcastle for some time right now. You also mentioned the rise of more traditional businesses starting to invest in technology. So the technology scene in Newcastle is growing as a whole.
Yep.
And that's not happening purely because of technology or pure software businesses growing here. There is a rise there, but there's also that significant rise of more traditional businesses investing in technology to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And what have you seen over, the past 5 years in Newcastle? Let's start there and then we'll move into your current role.
Yeah, well, I guess over the last 5 years, Newcastle as a whole has really evolved in the tech scene. So gone from being very kind of two ends of the spectrum. You've got your manufacturing businesses over this side, and then you've got, your software and digital agencies over that side. A few big industry players like, the building societies or NIB in the middle who have got, a traditional business with a heavy tech team. But other than that, you're either or. What we've started to see is the digital agencies and the tech shops who are pure tech and dev get more and more involved in the local industry businesses, manufacturing businesses, and the manufacturing business is just evolving. No matter where you go in the world, there's tech involved or there's tech getting involved. Because people want data on what their products are doing. They don't just want to make a widget and send it out the door and never see anything about it again. They want to know what's happening, particularly in commercial industries. So we're not just making, excavator buckets, for instance. We're not just making train carriages. We're not. We're actually making that we're just big steel cast things or, there's lots of industry throughout the whole Hunter Valley region that's always just made, big mechanical things. They're now attaching IoT, to use a generic term, to all of those products to understand how they function. So many of those industries are getting autonomous and robotic. To do that, you need to know so much all the time. You need sensors and things like that out there. So that side of the industry is growing. Then the software side is also coming closer because we're generating all of this data with these hardware sensors, but then we've got to do something with that data. So, there's software that needs to be able to integrate with hardware. And you're not just a pure data analyst because you've got to get the data out of the machine and, cleanse it and, code it up in a way that you can manipulate it and use it. Ones and zeros on a page don't mean a lot. You've got to turn that into something. So there's some roles there that are dev roles that are working with embedded systems and IoT and things like that. So it's an interesting industry. It's growing. I like that. Newcastle's well poised to continue growing those two things together. A lot of our manufacturing and heavy industry is quite mining related, and the mining industry is going very digital very quickly. I think we're in a great position to leverage our engineering expertise and blend it with our tech expertise, and really, be a powerhouse. In terms of developments that are accessible and that people might want to know about, things that we're seeing are like rapid prototyping type businesses, like your Newey Ventures or the Melt down at Warners Bay, the guys over at Robotic Systems. Those guys are specialists at helping industry, or anyone really, rapidly prototype hardware. So they've got multiple disciplines inside one organization around hardware and software integration. So those guys are spinning up prototypes that your other businesses are then turning into mass-produced products that are very tech-focused. So we've started to see some really cool projects come out of purely out of Newcastle, and I think that's great. We're seeing more and more of that. If you haven't seen it, the Melt facility down at Warners Bay is a fantastic initiative between ResTech, who's a local engineering R&D business. It's part of Amp Control, Slingshot, who are experts in spinning up startups and turning them into profitable businesses, and Dantia down there at Lake Macquarie. And they've got a bunch of funding to go and help startups and businesses that are hardware focused turn those ideas into real products. Yeah. So
I definitely think we've got some strengths in that area. You mentioned a couple of players there, and I think they go under the radar. I think they fly under the radar until you scratch the surface and you realize how big a strength we do have in that area.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the most exciting part is that breadth of industry. I think that's technology infiltrating nearly every industry, including pure tech plays. And I think Newcastle's starting to have spots of that across the board, which is becoming more exciting for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice, mate. You obviously have seen the rise of that. You were involved with Newey startups in the early days with myself. And I think over the past 5 years, we've seen a bunch of startups go from ideas to legitimate companies hiring 20 plus people. And we've got at least half a dozen companies that at significant rounds of funding now that are building good, solid teams here. What's your thoughts on that sort of startup scene in Newcastle?
Yeah, I think the pure software startup scene in Newcastle is thriving. We've got some great examples. You've had a few founders come through the podcast who are riding that wave, starting off 5+ years ago as a couple of founders. Now, as you said, with teams potentially across the globe, and they're really punching out good product, and they're high productive teams, they're growing teams. So I think your Camplifiers, your Lift Tangos, your Deckies and Switched In, and those guys in Newcastle are really kicking goals.
I also think the other exciting part of that is they're starting to feedback and provide information and education to the next round. Like I know Justin, for example, from Camplify is on the board of a couple of smaller startups that are going through the growth stage. So he's he's in a position to give a lot of his learnings throughout his processes and experiences to that, the next wave. And I think that'll only give greater opportunity for success to that, those next wave of startups coming through.
Oh, definitely. There's heaps of opportunity there, and most of these founders are keen to get around either people who want to be in those teams or who have other ideas. There's plenty of there's so much opportunity, and I think as a community we're gonna keep growing those kind of businesses. So if you're interested in tech, whether it's product management, whether it's UX, whether it's just pure dev. Or there's so many roles in marketing and those kind of things where they're really lean, agile teams, fast-paced, highly productive, new generation workplaces. There's heaps of opportunity happening around here.
Cool. Maybe we've talked about all the good things happening. What's the biggest challenge for us in the tech scene in Newcastle?
Probably the talent pool. It's hard. We've got businesses that are growing faster than experience is available. So I think, we're seeing everybody who's looking for, leading edge, experienced product managers or tech roles looking to Sydney are trying to draw those kind of people up here. It's not necessarily a hard sell if you find the right person, but not everybody wants to leave a big city. And I think that's probably one of the toughest things. Proximity to Sydney, some people think that that's a problem. I think that's just a mentality and a perception. I spent a long time jumping on the train and going to Sydney, and it's if you go around the world, it's no different to most places around the world that have got a big city. And 2 hours on the train to the CBD of Sydney is actually pretty achievable. So our proximity to everything that's available in Sydney, whether it's corporates, whether it's investors, whether it's peers, universities, all that kind of stuff, international transport, it's all right there. So I don't think we need to get closer to that. And our digital infrastructure isn't even holding us back anymore. 5 years ago, we would have been having a conversation about not having enough NBN in the region. Generally speaking, I don't think that's really a problem anymore, not for the majority of people, certainly not if you're a tech startup that just does everything inside a browser. So, I think we're in a good position to draw people from big cities, but we certainly don't have enough. Yeah.
I completely agree. Hey, we'll go a little bit more about you for a second. You're now in a space that you couldn't traditionally learn the skills you need to learn through traditional sources. I wouldn't say there's a degree out there that provides specific IoT experience or specific embedded experience or experience merging hardware and software. What's your thoughts on education or formal education to start with for the software or for the technology industry?
Well, for me, my formal education is a bit alternate. I was homeschooled for most of my early schooling, and then I jumped into a diploma of network engineering when I was just 15. So I had to kind of get some references and things to get my way into TAFE. So I started my career really early, but with a relatively high education in a diploma. But that's where I stopped.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that was because it was very practical and hands-on.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I was at a bit of a crossroads where I went, do I want to go down the road of tech or do I want to go into ag and be a farmer?
Yeah.
So I chose tech, and here I am. But the rest of it's just I've learnt along the way.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot at university, particularly if you want to really get into the techie side of hardware, chip design and embedded systems, and there's a lot to be learnt there. If you want to go and study mechatronics or something like that, if you really want to be at the front of that industry, then that's probably not a bad way to go. Yep. But as I mentioned earlier, if you want to understand what it's like and what you can do, and if you do or don't like hardware, it's easy to just get started. Don't wait till uni. Go and get some out of the box IoT and start playing around and see what you can do, because you can do a lot without a university degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real big thing for me is try before you buy when it comes to education. Don't go and buy a degree and then go and try the industry out. Try the industry out first. And then if you need the degree, go and get the degree.
Yeah. So a lot of what you've done, and you did this with Kegit, it was getting in there and getting your hands on. It was actually playing in the industry, and that's where a lot of your learnings come from. It's you forced yourself to have to pick up those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't gone deep on the IoT technology. I've stayed at more of a product manager level of understanding. So I'm very big on, from industry suppliers, let's trial and test your product.
Yeah.
I don't have to build it. I don't have to design the chips. I know enough about the battery specs and the chip specs and the comms specs to know, is that going to solve my problem? I don't need to design it.
Yeah.
And that enables me to build a solution quickly, because I can then go and grab that device, test it out. Does it give me the information that I need? Yes or no? No, it doesn't. Okay, find something else. There's so much available off the shelf. And where I've needed, I've sought to build my own network of experts. We've actually got some really top-notch experts in those fields right here in Newcastle. And so for me, I made it my mission and my goal to know those guys and build relationships with those guys, which meant I could catch up for a coffee or a beer and talk about the problems that I was having and ask their advice on which way to go.
Yeah, which I think is a big thing from an educational perspective and also career perspective is your network. Right?
100%.
Your network is something that, well, we always promote meetups here. I think meetups are a really good opportunity to build a network or to build relationships, but I just cannot overstate the importance of building a network.
Absolutely. For me, it's the reason why I am where I am now and in the position that I'm in, because I had to have a network. For anybody who's tried to get involved commercially in the craft brewing industry would know that it's a tight circle to crack. You've got to be a good networker. You've got to be a good relationship builder to have conversations with the people that matter, I guess. And then from the tech side of things, I was pulling together solutions with multiple different things in mind. So I had to be able to find those people and have those conversations and not have to, I guess, walk in as a customer every time, because I wasn't in a position to be a customer from the first conversation. So it was really about finding out, how am I going to understand who I need to talk to and start the conversation to work out, am I potentially going to use those services in the game that I'm in now? It's all about problem solving. So we're looking at what's the problem and understanding that problem really well to then narrow it right down to a key couple of components, and that's what you're going and finding a solution for. So they're soft skills. They're soft skills that don't get taught at university. Problem
solving, I think, can be taught at university. I think university can be extremely positive from a how to learn and how to problem solve perspective. I think there's an element there that can be taught really well through, or you learn that through university. Yeah,
there is a part of the problem solving can be taught, but it's hard to teach empathy. And at the end of the day, you are solving a problem for a person.
Yeah.
And if you aren't solving a problem for a person, then who's paying you?
Yeah.
So you could develop an amazing solution for a problem that somebody doesn't care about. They'll never pay you for it.
There's an app store out there with millions of apps now who are extremely well written, who the software is extremely well written and is really well produced. The people just don't want them.
Yeah.
So knowing who you're making something for, knowing your customer, it's phenomenal. Right?
Yeah,
that's important.
So I've had countless conversations. The more that people noticed that I was solving a problem or was in IoT, so many people would hit me up and say, "Hey Dan, I'd love to catch up and talk to you about, my thing." So many of those conversations are somebody who has over-engineered the solution to a problem that they saw existed, but they actually didn't know who their customer was. So they knew how to solve the problem, but what they didn't know was whether or not anybody had the problem. So if nobody has the problem, then no one's going to pay for the solution. So it's firstly going, I think that's a problem. Who has the problem? So if I take my Kegit example, kegs get lost. Who has the problem? Well, I think breweries have the problem. I find the person in the brewery whose job it is to manage the keg fleet. Turns out they do have the problem. They hate the problem. Okay, cool. Now I need to get to know them really well. Why do they hate the problem? What are the intricacies about what they do? Who is that person? What tools do they like to use? What do they not like to do? Are they more of a delivery driver, or are they more of a brewer? Or are they an operations manager, kind of middle management guy? Or is it, so many things. Yeah, so many questions. But get to know the person behind the problem. Yeah, for sure.
Completely agree, mate. Problem solving cannot be, once again, it's so important in any facet of any role, right? Yeah. But if we are close to the end, we'll rapid fire it toward, you personally, what you do in your day to be successful. Mate, any technologies or otherwise you use from a productivity perspective each day?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. I've spent a lot of time over the last few years on personal development because having an entrepreneurial vision is pretty full on. And if you're not, being the best version of yourself throughout that, then you're going to struggle. And it's not a very sustainable place to be if you're not looking after yourself and improving yourself. So I spend a reasonable amount of time, making sure that I'm sharp as a person. So listen to a fair bit of self-help, kind of positive sort of stuff. Love my Lewis Howes podcast and those kind of things. Yeah. And I've been getting into, the Power of Habits books and those kinds of things. It's not a tech tool, but I can guarantee you exercise is a massive productivity tool. If you exercise every day, particularly in the morning to get yourself going, you will be more productive through the day. That doesn't mean go and do a 2-hour workout and exhaust yourself, but do something physical every morning is probably the biggest productivity hack I have. And then in terms of keeping organized and keeping focused, I love the 3 things methodology. So don't have a big to-do list that you work off every day. Have 3 things that you want to get done today. And I use Trello to organize that. I have a bit of a Kanban board set up in Trello. I've got my 3 things that I want to get done today. I've got the things that I've already done. So when I do something, I move it to the done column. I don't just delete it. And then I've got the things I want to do tomorrow. There's usually half a dozen things on tomorrow. And then, this week and later on. Yeah. So that helps me stay focused. And the other thing I've just started doing basically this year, and it was off the back of reading a post from Jason Calacanis, and that was the 3 things I did today, and what blockers have I got that stop me from getting something done. And he implements that with his managers to say, I don't want progress reports. I just want to know the 3 things that you got done that move the needle closer to the goal.
Yeah.
So it's not, I send an email. It's like the 3 things that move the needle closer to the goal today. I've got in the habit of using that, and I shoot that off to my manager, and I'm getting the team to do the same thing. That's huge because it keeps you accountable. 3 o'clock comes around and you're like, what am I going to put in my 3 things? Yeah. Some days and suddenly you're like, oh, actually, I have moved the needle, or I haven't just, spent the day in my inbox. So that's huge. I love Slack from a communications point of view. I don't like email. I hate printed material.
I don't do printed material.
I do my best. I'm now in a bit more of a traditional business. That's a painful one, but I'm dealing with it. Slack, love it. Keeps your threads topical, stops email storms. Yeah. And then the other one is LastPass. I'm someone who's I have countless SaaS accounts, logins for websites. I recently got one of my bank cards hacked and a bunch of unauthorized transactions made. To be able to jump in and go, I've just changed my banking password and I've just changed all these other passwords. I don't know any of my passwords.
Yeah.
But LastPass looks after them. They're all 12 characters and randomized. It's secure. It's great. It's brilliant. Yeah. Use that. Keeps your information secure and keeps your memory free to remember the things you need to. Yeah.
I like it, man. I like it. you're not the first person that said that. There's a couple of people that are actually starting to talk about the actual importance of that, especially with security these days, and the rise of potential hacks and how important your information is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. We got a last question. If you had one piece of advice to tell a younger version of yourself, anything in particular that you'd wind back in?
I would say to my younger self, have a crack. Yeah, it took me a long time to jump out of security of just having a 9 to 5. I never thought that I wanted to be a small business owner. In fact, I loathed the idea of it. But I realized as I got older, that was actually something that I just inherited from my parents. So yeah, I wish I got in and had a crack earlier at doing something that I wanted to do rather than just, doing something secure. Yeah.
I like it. If people want to catch up with you, talk, maybe pick your brain on anything you mentioned today, what's the easiest way to get in touch?
LinkedIn's always great and pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm on socials as well. If you find me, hit me up. Happy to have a chat. That's probably the best way. I'm trying to get around to a lot of the meetups around Newcastle as well. So
awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
No worries. Cheers.